It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away. And the more we pay attention to every day that fills our eyes, the more we live extraordinary lives. It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away.
Ignatius gives us in the exercises a way for each retreatant to make an examination of conscience, especially in that first week, right? And that examination of conscience leads either to a particular confession, which I had to kind of remember what that meant, and that means going to confession to talk about a particular thing, or a general confession, which covers a lot more ground. But he also gives us this daily practice of an examination of our consciousness. And that's what I'm going to talk more about today. Those other things being very important, of course. David Fleming once said that this daily prayer remains the central exercise in Ignatian spirituality and our way of finding God in all things. This is our way of finding God in all things. The examen is the work of paying attention and of being open, of connecting the simple facts of our lives with a greater sense of purpose, of recognition of the small within the whole, of finding God in the things and the actions of the earth and the things that are happening to us in our own lives. It's not a hard prayer, but it takes a lot of intention. We have to get up every morning and remember to do it, or before we go to bed. It's our work. This is what we are called to do. The poet Mary Oliver writes in her poem, The Messenger, "Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished." And that's a beautiful definition of the examen, I think. Learning to stand still and be astonished. The opposite of the daily examen is living what Socrates might have called the unexamined life, which he said was not worth living. Not paying close attention to what's going on around us, refusing to be aware of the blessings and presence of God in our lives, not willing to be astonished. These things are some of the direst temptations we face in a very busy world. After all, we think we know it all, and we've seen it all. And so why do we have to pay attention? Yeah, I know God is there, and I know God loves me, and I know I have these great gifts in my life. And yet we're called to sit still and be astonished each day to see what happens to us, really. When we don't, we settle into a life where we yawn at sunrises and we blink through the beauty of our gardens and fields around us. We ho-hum our ways through all that we have come to be seen as ordinary and even deserved. We deserve this somehow. We deserve this beauty in our life. And therefore a meal becomes sustenance, and a family visit becomes perfunctory. A work of art becomes, that's nice, decoration. Without attention, our presence and our purpose and our acknowledgement of God's purpose in our lives, we allow that to sweep over our heads and go unnoticed. We live without that awareness, and therefore we begin to live without gratitude because we don't care to say thank you. Not because we don't care to say thank you, but because we forget to say thank you. Or we become so busy that we don't stop to say thank you. We forget to look and to pay attention, and so we become unaware. So it's for this reason that the examen has become an important daily practice for so many of us. It's a prayer that forces us to slow down and pay attention, and a prayer that includes the most powerful of all prayers, thank you. It's a prayer that St. Ignatius said we should pray every day, even if we don't have time for any other prayer. This is where we need to begin. Normally we talk about the examen being prayed at the end of the day because it's an invitation to look back over our day and discover where we may have encountered God. It's a chance to review our day and take notice of what has happened to us, how we've interacted with others. It's a chance before the day slips away to recall or maybe see for the first time where we have encountered God. When my daughter Jenny, who's 28 now, when she was young, we used to play this game in the car just to keep each other busy, I guess. And we would play this game called Count 10 Birds. And so we would just be driving down the road and we'd say, oh, there's one. Oh, there's two on the line over there. Just a little car game. And what I learned from that game, however, was if we hadn't been looking for those 10 birds, how many birds would we have counted? None, right? Because when we're not looking for things, we don't know to stop and count them. So in my Magis group that I'm running this year here, we're using Margaret Silf's book, Inner Compass. And she talks a lot about the examen in one of her early chapters of the books. And she talks about it in a way that it really resonated. She talks about it in terms of tracking our moods throughout a day and our orientations either toward or away from God. She describes the work of the examen as replaying the time under review, a day, hours, whatever, prayerfully, and then allowing the dominant moods of that period to surface again. So to look back not only on the things that we've done, but the mood we were in as we encountered those things. How did we feel somewhere deep when this was happening to us? And then she suggests we allow God to lead us into the real roots of those feelings and those moods. We track our moods to discover deeper movements, deeper desires, deep unease, deep moments of consolation and desolation. Deep movements, deep desires, deep unease. I'll add to that deep peace and deep moments of consolation and desolation. So if we felt rage or we felt apprehension, then we need to do the hard work. Remember, it's work to stand still and learn to be astonished. We need to do the deep work of prayerfully considering where those feelings came from. Margaret Silf refers to the examen as her day with God that asks two basic questions. Where was God today? And how was God today? And she offers us a pattern for the examen of stillness, thankfulness, light-seeking, reflection, sorrow, and hopefulness. Father Tetlow, who was mentioned earlier and who some of us know and have met, asked a similar question when describing the examen, and I love this. How do things stand between me and God today? I think anytime we can make anything simpler, it's good. And that kind of a question is a simplifying of the whole examen. How do things stand between me and God today? So the first step, which Margaret Silf would call stillness, is to become aware of God's presence. So we relax. We become still. We be still and learn to be astonished, right? So we relax, we're still. We let the tensions of the day kind of slip away from us. We ask for God's help in looking at the day with honesty. What really happened today? Help me to see that. Even that act of asking for help in seeing, it can be a really powerful prayer. We become aware of God being aware of us. We see our day as God sees it. And we thank God for all that he has done for us. So that's that first step of becoming still. The second step is thankfulness. Margaret Silf would call it. In this step, we review the day with gratitude in our hearts. We go through it hour by hour. We notice our blessings. We notice our interactions and our opportunities. And we try not to forget the ordinary. It's not always just the big things. It's that you look out the window and there's the sunrise, right? We have an interaction with our children, our grandchildren. Those ordinary things, we turn on the faucet and warm water comes out. We flip the switch and the power comes on. What did we do or say today? What did we neglect to do or say today? We are still in those memories. We sit still in those memories and thank God in our own way for them. The next step is to pay attention to the emotions that rise up in you as we go through those steps. What Margaret Silf would call light seeking. We're looking for the light in these things, and we're reflecting on them. We savor the moments instead of forgetting them, instead of letting them just fly over our heads. And maybe we pick one or two that really seem to resonate and bubble up in us. And we savor those emotions, those moods, those patterns of behavior that surface. And we pray from those. We thank God for those specific moments. Positive or negative, let's not kid ourselves that everything is beauty and lightness in our lives every day. Sometimes the things that will bubble up will be dark and will be difficult. But that's a consolation too, to be aware and to be able to pray from those things. Positive or negative, they both hold meaning. And so we look for those things to draw us closer to God or further away from God, which we all know are the seeds of consolation and desolation, right? Does this thing draw us closer to God, or does it somehow push us away? Those are the basic tools of discernment when we're trying to make a decision. So what do our omissions, our thoughts, our desires tell us about our relationship with God as we work our way through our day? How was God today? Where was God today? The next step is rejoicing, praising, or seeking forgiveness. It's responding to these things that have been brought up. Joy and sorrow. To reflect on what is happening to us and to talk to God about what we just learned in that time of reflection. We ask God to show us what's really important. We rejoice in the times when we're drawn closer to God, and we ask forgiveness for the times that we've resisted or where we have allowed ourselves to be pushed away. We thank God for the awareness that we've received, for the awareness itself is a gift. It's all gift. We allow God to rejoice with us or console us, depending on what we need. And the last step is to set ourselves up for tomorrow. Hopefulness. We ask God to be a part of our next day. We ask God for the grace that we need to be more aware and to be more grateful, to be practical and specific in our asks. We need to be committed to changing those things that we think need to be changed. What are our attitudes, our moods, our fears that need to be changed in a very specific way? And can we ask God for those before they happen, before we need them? We must be open to change, open to surprise, right? That's what we learn when we talk about our indifference that we live our lives with. Not an indifference of we don't care, but an indifference that says, surprise me today. You know what I need better than I know what I need, so I'm going to let myself be open to that. And we place our trust for tomorrow and future in God and not in ourselves. Rabbi Harold Kushner once wrote this: can you see the holiness in those things that you take for granted? A paved road, a washing machine. If you concentrate on finding what is good in every situation, you will discover that your life will suddenly be filled with gratitude, a feeling that nurtures the soul. Although the examen is most commonly prayed near the end of the day, it's very much more than a nighttime prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. What happened to me today? It's a prayer that shapes our entire day. It's a prayer that allows us to get up in the morning and say, how should I begin this day? Or as I just said, surprise me. It's a prayer that does say at the end of the day, how did my day go? Or maybe halfway through the day, how am I doing so far? We allow this, we internalize this and take it beyond just another prayer that we check off our list, and we really internalize it. It begins to shape every decision we make. It begins to shape every encounter we have, because we can begin to see this encounter as an encounter with God and with the divine. Because it is, one way or the other. We just have to realize it and recognize it, to stand still and be astonished. It's a prayer that ultimately leads us to ask questions like these three. Can I greet the day with expectation? It's not always easy to do. We get up feeling a little bit different every day, depending on how we like our life and our jobs and our families and what's going on in them. But can we greet the day with expectation? A sense of wonder and surprise. Openness to surprise. Second, can I begin the day with gratitude for all the blessings and opportunities in my life? And third, can I live each day available to others around me? Somewhere along the line from one of you, I learned this idea of the ministry of availability. How available do I make myself to others? Because if we do this hard work of the examen, if we stand still and we've learned to be astonished and we begin to see God all around us and we do nothing with that, then what's the purpose? Right? Are we becoming more available and open to the people around us? This is from Henry Nouwen. To be grateful for the good things that happen in our lives is easy. But to be grateful for all our lives, the good as well as the bad, the moments of joy as well as the moments of sorrow, the successes as well as the failures, the rewards as well as the rejections, that requires hard spiritual work. Still, we are only truly grateful people when we can say thank you to all that has been brought to us, that all that has brought us to the present moment. As long as we keep dividing our lives, I love this line, as long as we keep dividing our lives between events and people we would like to remember and those we would like to forget, We cannot claim the fullness of our beings as a gift of God to be grateful for. We don't get to choose who comes into our life. And that's why Ignatius tells us over and over to find God in all things. It's not just the things that we like. It's not just the things that make us happy. As long as we keep dividing our lives between events and people we would like to remember and those we would rather forget, we cannot claim the fullness of our beings as a gift of God to be grateful for. That's from his book, Bread for the Journey, in case you want to follow back on that.
It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away. And the more we pay attention to every day that fills our eyes, the more we live extraordinary lives. One day I stood out by the road, and beyond my fields the river flowed. Gold stalks shimmered in the light, my soul on fire, my mind in flight. It was just one moment in the sun, a reckoning when day was done, a time to stand and be amazed, for we spend our lives as we spend our days. It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away. And the more we pay attention to every day that fills our eyes, the more we live extraordinary lives. When we look ahead, say someday soon, when we wring our hands and count the moons, when we fret the sands in the hourglass, we can miss the days that become our past. So with the sun each day I rise, my only prayer to be surprised by the beauty that the world displays. For we spend our lives as we spend our days. It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away. And the more we pay attention to every day that fills our eyes, the more we live extraordinary lives. It's an ordinary time on an ordinary day. It's the simple things we do that take our breath away.